here we are in Oxford, and we're very lucky to have this man here. He's going to play in the shed tonight. This is Sean Shibe, who's famous for all kinds of things, but also the guitar. Right, Sean. So tell me what you've been up to. What's your next concert?
Okay. So I'm playing here this week, and then I've got a concert on Saturday in a place called Weston.
Oh yeah.
I'm doing BBC Radio 3 in June on Monday.
Great.
Bath Festival over the weekend, and playing the Concerto de Andras twice in London next month and going to Aldborough.
So a fairly quiet time for you then, is it? So tell me a little bit about your relationship with the BBC, because I think more people should know about what you were to them.
Scheme. Yeah, so I was given a position on the New Generation Artists scheme,
Right.
Which is basically a scheme for young instrumentalists and singers to develop a professional relationship with the BBC, and through that you end up recording in studio sessions with them twice a year, which is 45 minutes per session.
Wow.
Which is a lot of solo repertoire to give them. On top of that, you work with each of the BBC orchestras on a concerto, which can be performed live or recorded for future broadcast, and you'll also give several recitals in venues around the UK, like the Wigmore Hall, the Sage in Gateshead, and various other festivals. And this is all recorded and then all broadcast over a period of around 2.5 years. But you can't repeat any of the repertoire, so you're learning all of this repertoire constantly, and it's a lot of work. But it's the best kind of it's exposure in the true sense, right? A lot of festivals are like, oh, do this for free, you'll get some exposure, and like it's often not all it's cracked up to be. But this was definitely all it's cracked up to be.
Very good. So. Did you choose the repertoire yourself, or did they tell you what to do, or?
Yeah, you have
free choice.
I mean, I did at least because I was the first guitarist, but I'm sure that maybe there were certain prescriptions for singers or violinists that they've had before that they couldn't repeat so much.
So when did you actually take part in this program?
2012 to 2014.
So it's actually a significant period of time to be working as an employee of the BBC.
Right,
Yeah.
under numerous freelance contracts, so I unfortunately can't say I was an employee, but I was doing a master's at the same time in Graz in Austria with Paolo Pecoraro, who's a fantastic teacher, and I would really like to have been able to complete that, but I wasn't able to because you had to go back to London every 2 weeks, and Graz is really disconnected from the world.
Is
so,
it? Yeah.
It took about 14 hours to get there because you'd fly KLM for the guitar, so it was pretty exhausting altogether. And of course my German was awful, so I couldn't deal.
So what are you doing nowadays? So presumably your work with the BBC is kind of officially ended. Are you still doing any recording with them?
So the Aldborough concert next month is going to be broadcast live, actually. So I'll play the Nocturnal and also do Tippett's songs for Achilles.
Great.
And that'll go out. There are some future projects that we're dreaming up together, but they like to consider you to be still part of the family, right?
Very good.
Which is something that most institutions say, but very few institutions really end up fulfilling, and they have, which is really nice.
Well, I think it's such a great thing, and I hope the BBC does continue in its present format, so that we'll hear more guitarists like you. Actually, tell me a little bit about how you were selected for this. What did you do?
Nothing actually.
Nothing.
It's the guy whose baby this scheme was used to in my time when I was accepted onto the scheme.
Yeah.
It was that he would pick all artists who came along, which sounds much more dictatorial than it was. In many ways, it actually ended up being fairer than what you might expect would come about if there was a jury deciding, right? Because with a jury, there's always this issue of like the enforcing of some kind of homogeneity and eventuality, whereas one guy, although that has its own potential pitfalls, it ends up with potentially a lot more personality on the scheme than you would have otherwise accepted, which is, it's guitar competitions, it's why I like we end up with a specific kind of player.
Exactly. Well, the last time I saw you was the Commonwealth, the Royal Commonwealth thing.
I met you on a train once. In Britain as
Yes,
well,
we
because
did meet
I
on a
lived in
train,
Scotland.
but that competition was very important for you, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that, because I'm sure many people don't really know about it.
So that was the Royal Overseas League competition.
Yes.
Which is an annual music competition with a large cash prize, which I was in dire need of at the time. And it's open to all instrumentalists.
Right.
So that makes it harder for obvious reasons, but perhaps, debatably the guitar also has an opportunity to shine there too. So because they had links to most major music festivals around the UK.
And that got you
lots of
on the
opportunities.
circuit, did it, as well?
On a circuit,
Sort of.
yeah. I mean, it gave me a fair amount of recognition. Yeah, for sure. But I think, I think a lot of players have issues with competitions, and
Yes.
I don't have so much issue with that competition because it really did nurture your career over the next 2 years, and I think a lot of guitar competitions
Yes.
might intend to do that, but really they give you 1 or 2 concerts. They don't. We end up with the ridiculous situation where it's like Marcian Dilla ends up
Yes.
with a career after winning like 20 first prizes, and that
Yes.
really should not be the way that we expect young instrumentalists to go about making a career. I think that competitions have the power that they do over us because we enter them, and if we chose not to, and I'm not saying that we should all boycott them, but maybe we should.
Well,
that's
it's a
something-
difficult thing for me, actually, competitions, because I often feel that that competitions are for horses, as someone said, and it's very difficult to judge the musicality or whatever the presentation.
Very difficult, if not impossible.
Of course, it's impossible. It's invidious, actually.
Yeah. And of course there are the usual problems of like, okay, so somebody's teacher is on the jury. Oh, well, it just happens that 10 of his pupils entered the competition, and so you have this whole issue of like corruption. And we know as people who are part of this world that like certain competitions have the reputation for being insufferably corrupt, often the most major of them. So what's the alternative route for a young musician?
For a young musician
is a good question. I think the internet offers us a lot of opportunities to pursue different kinds of paths, but the effect of social media is something that is quite debatable. I don't know. I think in the future we're going to see a lot more individual-led projects.
What do you think about live performance as opposed to, say, a YouTube video? I mean, do you think that the live performance is dropping off? Do you find that you get more audience? What kind of audience? How old they are and that sort of thing? Do you think it's a popular thing?
I think certain venues have great popularity, and certain areas have more popularity than others. I don't think a YouTube video or YouTube is ever going to make irrelevant like live performance.
I'm asking you because you seem to do a lot of live performances, and I was just wondering if you actually noticed, if the audiences are increasing, or what kind of audience you get.
There are a lot of old people often in the audience, and you're like, oh, it'd be cool to see a younger crowd. I think this could link into the whole idea of like individual-led projects and different ideas of how to bring a new audience in. Which I mean, there was an interesting project going on recently, and it's like a car park in Peckham is being used to hold concerts of basically a symphony orchestra, and that's kind of cool, and you see a lot of young people there. Sure, maybe there are some people being put off by the culture, the conservative nature of a lot of concert hall etiquette and style, but I don't feel like. In YouTube there are so many barriers to quality. Like
I agree.
The video can be bad. Of course, the guitarist or the musician could often be bad as well, right? Anybody can put stuff out there.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a good microphone or somebody's listening to it on bad speakers, you have such a bad experience. So performance in its live sense is really the only thing that we have a guarantee of that kind of quality of sound, if not the quality of
I think the reason I was asking you was because I think that live performance actually has a slight rarity value nowadays, and I think it will become more cherished as time goes on. But perhaps it's the guitar, perhaps it's our sort of music, which people.
You feel like fewer people are coming to guitar concerts, basically.
I don't know. I haven't been to many.
Oh, see, you're the problem.
But most of the ones I've been to, they're usually full of guitarists as usual.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, I've just moved to London, and
Yeah.
the IGF is like, I was going there to a few of the concerts, and yeah, it's like, you see a lot of guitarists, a lot of luthiers, a lot of people in the industry there. So
we need more people from outside who value live performance, I think.
Well, I think I think a lot of guitar festival programming is really shoddy, and it actually gives people who aren't guitarists very little reason to go.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is terribly uninspired. I think a lot of the time, if you look at the festival director, you can see the kinds of people they're bringing in, and they happen to be their friends. Like, what do you know?
Well, no.
Yeah. So, it just makes me really disillusioned with the idea of the guitar world, and really grateful for the position I have, at least in the UK, that I am able to play in festivals that aren't only serviced by guitarists.
Yeah.
And I realize that what I'm saying is like stupidly unpolitically fuck you all, but like
No, but it's good. I mean, I think you're making very good points. So what I'm going to go on to say now is, what is the program that you're going to be playing tonight and the next couple of weeks, and why?
It's really guitar-y repertoire.
Tell us a little bit more about it.
I'm going to be playing two fantasies by Dowland.
Yeah.
So Fantasia 1A, preceded by Forlorn Hope Fantasy.
Fantastic.
I'll go straight on to Malcolm Arnold's Fantasy, which is not played very often, I feel. I mean, a lot of people don't like the piece, and in certain movements the structure is fairly bizarre, but I think it has great merit as well. I really do. And then Walton's Five Bagatelles and Britten's Nocturnal after John Dowland to neatly round us up with Forlorn Hope Fantasy and Come Heavy Sleep. So Forlorn Hope and then Death.
So there's a very, very interesting order of program, actually, I think. Because you're starting, as you say, with fairly low key emotion, and then ending also into this idea of death.
Yeah, there's a bit of symmetry. Yeah.
So it's a very unusual form of programming. I think many guitarists would go for the big noise at the end, and you're going to end with the quietest note in the whole guitar repertoire, I think.
Right. Yeah, I think going back to like errors of judgment in the guitar world, whatever we want to think that is. It's not only like deciding which artists are going to come to your festival, it's also like what pieces am I going to play. So, like when I program, I want to immerse people in a world or make them think about it, like whatever they've heard in a new context by juxtaposing it in an interesting way. This isn't room for juxtaposition really in this program. It's more like this is England and the guitar kind of summed up with these pieces in a certain way. It's a certain viewpoint of the English guitar scene in the 20th century. But I'm going to be recording all of this repertoire
as well
in December and February for release next year with a really great little boutique-y Scottish label. So that's really what I'm doing. I'm playing it as much as I can, learning it in as many ways as I can, so that I'm prepared for what's to come.
So you mentioned a Scottish label. Tell me a little bit about your background.
My father is from Cheam in Surrey, and my mother is Japanese. But they moved to Scotland my father moved when he was 7, my mother moved in the 80s, and I was born and brought up there. So
In Edinburgh?
Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice city.
It is
So,
nice.
do you consider yourself Scottish?
I mean, I was born there, so I guess I do. But like, in terms of national identity, do you mean like do I?
Well, I mean, yeah, possibly. Is there a lot of, let's say, Japanese influence in the way you look at things, or from Qing?
Yeah, I really like to emphasise like like pentatonic scales when I come across the Norway.
Well, Britain was very interested in Japanese culture, of course.
Yeah. Look, I mean, no, basically.
Yeah, okay,
there was
fine.
a really good question that I was given by an interviewer recently who said like basically the same thing. I mean, basically she said like, what kind of influence does being half Japanese have on me? But I think Scotland is quite an ethnically homogenous nation, right? It's like really, really white, and I think the influence that having a Japanese mother, the influence that had on me was that usually white people would be saying, what's it like to not be white, you know?
Yeah.
And if anything, that small degree of alienation that gives to somebody when they're growing up and they're always having that kind of question, or that the attitude behind that question given to them, that's what I got from it, is not quite feeling as at home as I would like to have done. So in this sense, I don't really feel Scottish. I feel like I'm from Edinburgh. Yeah.
So where did you actually end up studying the guitar in the first place?
I went to a music school in Edinburgh, Scotland. Has these state-funded national centres of excellence where they provide specialist tuition in various spots around the country, free of charge. It now costs money because of vicious Tory draconian cuts. But I went to one in Edinburgh, then I went to one in Aberdeen, and then I studied in Glasgow, which was free because evil SNP socialism allows it to be free, which is good. And then I went to Austria, which is also basically free. I think it costs like €17.50 per semester to be a student there. So I didn't go to London, didn't go to England, basically, because it cost a lot of money, and I was after specific teachers as well. So.
Well, when we first met, you were about 13, I think, in National Youth Guitar Ensemble. Where were you studying at that time? Were you in Edinburgh or were you in Glasgow?
Yeah, I was in Edinburgh. I was studying with a Polish composer teacher called Marek Pasieczny at that time.
Right. Who obviously was a very good teacher, I think, because you really had the right attitude of playing.
Yeah, I remember like sometimes he'd come in and he'd just be like, what are you doing next week? And I'd be like, having a lesson with you, I guess. And he's like, no, I can't come. Today we have 4-hour lesson.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
For a 12-year-old, that's pretty good.
And like, I just wouldn't be able to go to my classes, which I was supposed to go to. And they'd be like, where's Sean? And I'd be like, sorry, I guess I'm not coming to English.
Well, it's really great to see you come quite a long way. And, I'd like to wish you all the best in everything in the future, and I hope many people come to your concerts, because I think you're a great player, one of our real you say up and coming, but actually I think you're basically there, and people should listen to what you have to say, I mean, in your programming as well as your playing. So we're very privileged to have you in the shed tonight, and we shall have a great party later, I'm sure. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Gerald. So, in this way, we end, because of the reverse variation form of the piece, with death having begun only for Lauren.